Welcome to Laurentian Valley Special Meeting, Laurentian Valley Council Special Meeting for November 26th. Dean, call to order, please.
Motion to call order, please.
Jennifer and Alan.
Moved by Councillor Gauthier, second by Councillor Wren. That the special council meeting on November 26, 2024 be called to order at 4:20.
All in favor? Carried. Roll call.
Mayor Bennett.
Present.
Reeve Watt.
Present.
Councillor Gauthier.
Present.
Councillor Hewitt.
Present.
Councillor Hughley.
Present.
Councillor King. Councillor Wren.
Present.
All members present except for Councillor King, who's on her way from what I understand.
Confirmation of the agenda. Keith and Brian.
Moved by Reeve Watt, second by Councillor Hughley, that the agenda of the special council meeting of November 26, 2024 be approved as presented.
All in favor? Carried. Declaration of peculiar interest and general nature thereof. Excuse me. Sean, please.
Okay, Dean, if we can get the screen changed. All right, well, we'll start into the second iteration, I guess, of our 2025 budget. So just a reminder of the timeline. We're on the 26th, which is the second deliberation. Assuming all goes well tonight, then on December 3rd would be budget public meeting where give a pretty in-depth presentation, and then if there were members of the public that between really now and then or at that meeting that want to make a comment, they could. And then assuming that all would go well, December 17th, the budget bylaws would be passed and everything would be formally approved. So from the presentation, the summary of the budget for the second draft, you'll notice that I have a couple TBDs in here, so to be determined, because I wasn't quite certain which way council would be leaning. But in terms of the water increase, nothing has changed since the original first draft. So looking at about $129 per residential unit increase. The capital investment, just over $2.3 million. It has decreased a little bit. It's down to about an investment of $585 per household. And then we'll talk about the tax levy increase, the wastewater levy, and the impact on our reserves. Just a reminder that a 1% levy increase or decrease anyway is about $68,318. This slide here is a summary of what was presented in the first draft. So it turned out that if the total increase for somebody that might be on wastewater, water, and then general taxation at the median assessed value of $244,000 for a residential home, they would have seen an increase of $496. So this is just to summarize what was presented in that first draft. So changes from the first draft in recreation and culture with the Grants to Recreation Association, the annual grant amount would be returned to the 2024 level. We have a $5,000, originally was presented a $10,000 grant to the Ottawa Valley Historical Society, and that has been reduced to $5,000. Then we took $5,000 of that was earmarked for that group, and we moved it to LV sponsorship line item, and we did that as well with a $3,000 from the Forest Lee Park. And that is to be for application. So that $8,000 added to the LV sponsorship line is to be like application based, which staff are working on updating our policy and how we'll do those two intakes. That reduction from the budget is about $26,000. And just to catch you up, Councillor Kings, we're not very far through. We're basically just going through the changes that we've made since the first draft. And really, recreation and culture, we had a reduction of $26,000 really around the contributions to recreation associations. We just started not too long ago, so you haven't missed lots.
Thank you, my apologies.
So the summary of the operating is a lot of math on this slide, but I'll draw your attention to the bottom line. With those changes, with the first draft, which is the third column in, or I guess second from the left, was 11.3% increase on operating. That's not levy increase, that would have been year over year. But with the change we've made, that's down to 10.56. Really the only change here is in the recreation and culture line item. On the original draft, I did present, if we took out some of the key drivers, what that operating increase would have been. So, and it was, I believe, 2.6%. So that change that we made would be an increase of 2.3%. If we, if we still had the same transfer from reserves for operating, that was in 2024 was to offset some gravel increases, but we have not, we've not recommended doing that again this year. Then we know we had the increase in policing by $270,000, and then we have increase in debt payments of $90,000. So if you remove those, everything else shakes out to be a 2.3% increase. So for changes to capital, so we removed the flagpoles at the administration office. We removed the fire vehicle from this year's capital budget. We removed the Public Works 1-ton truck with dump box from this year's capital budget. We removed the wood chipper from the budget. We removed the flagpoles at Elgin Street Park. There is a commitment to put into reserves $97,500. That is half of the 2 vehicles. So we put that into reserves this year. That reduction to the capital budget is $136,500. So we try to fund the capital that we would be doing. We have to figure out what we have to pay for the capital. And really we get to a bottom line about $2.1 million, which is made up of our balance in the our estimated balance in the capital reinvestment reserve, the 2025 contribution of $729,000, our beginning balances in our other capital reserves, and then we have our Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, which is OSIF, and then our CCBF allocation. With those, all that together, we have about $2,123,415 of capital financing available to us before taking on any debt. I do go through, just bear with me here 1 second. So this would be how we propose to finance our capital works. So we have like I said, $2.3 million. We would use the $729,000 of capital reinvestment. We'd use the $380,000 of OSIF, the $306,000 of CCBF. We would pull from our capital reserves $118,260, and then we are proposing to debt finance Robinson Road at about $506,000, which leaves a shortfall of $344,500 we'd have to raise through taxation. So when we compare the new proposed 2025 for the summary of our tax levy to 2024, for our operating, we would need to generate $6,144,830 from taxation. Then we're going to raise $729,000 to put into our capital reinvestment, which we're basically turning around and using. We've committed, or it's been recommended to commit $97,500 to other capital reserves. And then we have our capital levy of $344,500, which means we have to generate $7,315,857 from taxation. And you can see the comparators to last year, which is about $6.8 million. So it's an increase of $484,000, which equates to 7.09% increase to the taxation levy. The breakdown of our taxation levy from on the left-hand side is 2024. So you'll see 81% of what we generated through taxation was to put towards our operating, with 19% towards capital. This year it's shifted slightly. So we have our operating at 84% and our capital at 16%. I think ideally over the long term, you'd want to see, if anything change, you want to see capital probably increase the share of the pie. I mean, that's the where you really want to be putting investments to, and staff and management, we'll work towards finding efficiencies in our operating to always try to lower that, and so we have more money to go towards capital projects. So a summary of where we're at. So a 7.09% levy increase equates to about $86.14 for the median assessed home. We would still be drawing 20,760 out of reserve. So at the end of the day, our reserve balance is estimated to decrease by that amount. And then we'd have 533, almost 534,000 still left in our capital reserves. So
Sean, what's our percentage again out of the 100, us, county and education?
we're around the 33%. It's in that area that we would, 33%.
County's at 36, I think. Or something.
Yeah, and then we have our policing in there. That's of the whole of what we would collect from the taxpayer, yeah. So I have 6 different options here, I guess 7 with the current one, but so where we stand is the top line, and then depending on if council desired to, change what that levy increase would be, I kind of show how much is for the median assessed home it would be, and then what that effect is on our capital reserve. So you'll see at 7.49, it's about a $91 increase for our median assessed home. It generates another $29,000, which would bring our net effect on our capital reserves to a positive number. And then it just goes down all the way to 9.99 because the direction was anything under 10 when we left here that night. So that I will leave, we'll go back to this slide in a little bit, but just for council's consideration, I'll take questions on this right now, but if we don't want to make a decision because we want to see what happens in the following slides with wastewater, then we can kind of revisit them both at the same time. Or if council feels strongly one way or another, we can make that decision now. But I'll pass it to you, Mr. Mayor, if there's any questions.
I don't have any right now. I don't know if anybody else. We'll wait until we get the other numbers from wastewater and add it all up and see where we're at.
Okay, so wastewater options. So the second column in is the original budget as presented. So we had $85,000 worth of capital, and we did, and we still recommend financing that through reserves. We didn't pull any reserves to finance any of our operating expenditures, which would have left an estimated ending reserve balance of $977,000, so just shy of that $1 million mark. That increase, that rate, the median assessed home, because we do bill wastewater based on taxable assessment. So we use that same $244,000 median assessed home. It'd be just over $1,000, which is a $281 increase from the year before, and percentage increase is at 38.79. So then I laid out options as we move to the right. So there's 5 options here on the amount that could be pulled from reserves to offset operating and what that effect is. So if we pull $25,000 from reserves, it makes that increase to $250. If we pulled $50,000, it's $219. $65,000 is $199. $75,000 is $188. And if we pulled $100,000, it's a $157 increase. So I would just say that as the treasurer, it'd be my recommendation, strictly from knowing that the rates are going to continuously increase, it'd be my recommendation that we wouldn't pull for operating. But having said that, I do understand, the increase is substantial for the users, and it may be council's desire to want to do that. So I'll pass it back to the mayor if there's questions and comments.
And maybe before we get into more questions, Sean, I know, you're looking at that 17%, but we're also looking at 17% next year and the year after as well, correct?
Yeah, so and just to clarify, that 17% is what the city of Pembroke their rate to us. So we've met with, I guess, the consultants that would have aided Laurentian Valley in the coming to the agreement with the city of Pembroke. And it's very, very likely that 17% would not decrease right now. So we are pretty certain that next year would go up another 17% in the rate. And when the new rate study is to be completed, it is estimated that costs have increased, and it very well could be beyond 17%. But 15.
Yeah, maybe just, and I guess what Sean is saying, there is a rate study being worked on now. We anticipate it being done in 25, so for 26, we'll get actual costs for the following 5 years. But as Sean said, likely it's gonna be 17 or more. I don't think it will be less. I mean, it could be. I guess there's nobody said set in stone, but at this point, we're probably looking at 17 for sure.
Okay, Alan?
So Sean, I know that you're suggesting that we don't take anything out of operating reserves, but I think this is a special year, and I think it's gonna be really hard on our ratepayers. And I know last year, we took some out of operating in order to soften the blow to the wastewater users. I kind of really like the 199, okay, which would be 65,000 out of reserves, and I know that's less than what we did last year. And I know I'm always the one that preaches if we take it out this year, we're gonna have to pay it next year, and that's why we got such a huge increase this year. But I think we're gonna take less out this year than what we did last year, and we're going in the right direction, and we would aim to be in the $50,000 or $25,000 next year. So my suggestion would be the 65,000 we would take out of reserves this year to soften that blow. Because it's going to be very hard on some of our ratepayers in the built-up area, not only for the tax increase, but the water and the wastewater. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. What's the water number again, Sean? It's 129? No.
I believe 129, but I can go
Okay.
back and confirm. Yes, once, thank you.
Okay, so it's 129 plus if we go with the 199, that's $419 increase.
But remember, I guess the thing to remember there is the 129, what did you say, 129?
Water,
Water is a set flat fee increase. This is based on your assessment, so 199 is based on 244 assessment. Anything more than that, it's more than that. Right. For the sewer,
Okay.
wastewater.
But correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that a lot of the built-up area is somewhere in around that $250,000 mark assessment.
Yeah, I don't actually know for sure. I mean, we haven't been able to pull that out of the data, but I would assume it'd be in that area.
Because we're still based on 2016 assessment, correct?
Correct.
Not today's rate.
Water might not be in that category, but.
Well, good point.
Okay, so is council agreeable with the 199 rate? Taking out 65,000 in reserves?
Is there any comments?
Because we got them, Keith,
Even doing that, we're still gonna have another increase again next year.
17%.
And then the year after to catch up and to try and,
At least next year will be 17%, but then the rate study will be done. So we'll know how many more years and what the percentage is gonna be for the next 5 years. So we'll know before we do 2025 budget.
When that study is done, it's good for 5 years.
I just want to clarify on the 17%. Again, that is what the city charges us. So you'll see, we went up 17%, but for our rate to the city goes up 17% for wastewater, but equated to 39% increase because we were making up last year's contribution from the reserves. And then we have our own increase, for inflation for our costs on what it costs us to do the wastewater. So we would anticipate at least 17% for the rate to the city of Pembroke. And then, yes, we're hoping to have the rates, that the city has the rate study done, which would outline the next 5 years fee that we would pay them. And maybe it's 17% increase, maybe it's a little less, maybe it's more. We don't know that until it gets done.
Brian?
And that's 17% compounded too,
That's right.
which
Yep.
But again, that's not the whole budget, okay? Let's be clear, that's the rate that the city's charging us on water. We still have our own budget that we're trying to control, our own system. And I don't know if we know how much the actual operating is going up in Orange Valley wastewater system, because I want to make sure that, the public knows that we have, we've held our books together to a certain point. Where we're using the 17%, but it's only on the rate, but I mean, that's a big number for us, I get that, but I don't know if you can comment on that, Sean, at all?
Well, I can't comment on I guess I didn't prepare for
no, I
that,
didn't know.
but the driver of it, because it's the biggest line item, is the rate to the city. So even if ours goes up, you know, our operating goes up, let's say 5%. On the bottom line, it's really a drop in the bucket because of the other increase is so large and it's the biggest. And then we have capital that we have to do. And I know Mark is working diligently on accomplishing the capital upgrades that are in the agreement. So it's not, so we also have responsibilities in that water wastewater agreement to upgrade our infrastructure. So we're incorporating that, you know, that's why we have $85,000 worth of capital that we're doing there. So anyway, I'll leave it with the table.
And you can always go back. I know people don't want to hear it anyways, but, you know, we had the old agreement with the city 8 to 10 years after the agreement was done. So these rates would be even probably more today if we'd signed that agreement 8 years ago. So there was a savings to the water and sewer users up until really this big increase of 17%. Like maybe last year too, right, Sean? 2024.
Yeah, I know the rate that the city was, if I'd have to go back and look at the video of what we did, but I think we've had this conversation really last year at the same time, because I think 24 would have been the second year of that agreement. And we saw that substantial increase, and we basically, I think, had the same conversation, you know, that we did, but I understand it's tough, so, you know.
Alan?
And the biggest driver in that rate study is the major capital improvements that the city of Pembroke are going through on the system today that we pay our share on. So that's what's driving it. It's not that they're putting it to us. Every time they raise the rate, it raises the price they have to charge their residents as well.
And just if I could add clarity to what the rate study is intended to do is, as far as I understand it, I just learned this the other day on our call, but why that's going up like that is to get, so it's for the city or any municipality, is to get full cost recovery of their assets. So they have all these assets, they got to recover X amount over, you know, the lifespan of their assets to replace and fix and everything else. Well, as those costs increase, so right now they're not at full cost recovery. Like with the way that the study and the engineers and whatever have done, they're not actually recouping fully what they should be recouping to replace those assets. And that's why you're seeing a big increase. Now, in theory, when you get up to full cost recovery, then it shouldn't be huge increases beyond, because you've already got to that level. You're basically then, in theory, would be increasing by, you know, the rate of inflation on capital projects, right? But you got to get there, and that's the pain point at this point in time.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but Alan, maybe you'll remember too, that when we were going through the partnership with the city, I thought at 2028, 2029, it started to level off. And I think that's exactly what Sean is talking about. We're paying for their cost recovery, which we didn't pay the previous 20 years in the old contract.
So like just one example of the major capital improvements is the water tower in the city of Pembroke, which we need, because that's how we got our water pressure, needs to be replaced. It's not doing the job that it should be, and it needs to be replaced and upgraded to something better. So that's in the near future. That's not like 10 years out. That's within the next few years that tower has to be replaced.
You know, and the alternative is to have our own water and sewer system, which is not even imaginable. So we have to live with the race that the city is doing. Keith?
So Sean, can you remind me where we are we equitable with the city for their wastewater?
So I did have in my last presentation, I'm trying to get back to where I was. I'm a little bit lost here in my presentation, so just give me 1 second. When you compared water and wastewater together, we were very close. I think we were $65 out in 2024. It wasn't like we were very close in, we were higher in one, which I can't remember off the top of my head which one that was, and lower in another one. So, but when you combine the two of them for a user, we were, I think it was 60, we were within 65, we were $65 more than a residential user in the city of Pembroke.